It started with a single tear rolling down Maya Chen's cheek in Sector 7's processing plant. In a world where emotions had been extinct for 3 decades, where feelings were considered a mental illness, that tear was more dangerous than any weapon, because it reminded 8 billion people what they had lost. But let me take you back to the beginning. Back to when humanity decided that feeling was the enemy and efficiency was God. The year was 2087, and Earth had achieved what philosophers had dreamed of for millennia: perfect peace. No wars, no crime, no domestic violence, no mental illness. The suicide rate was 0. Depression was a word found only in historical archives. Anxiety disorders were extinct as the dodo bird. All it had cost was the human soul, Maya. Chen stood at workstation 7432 in the Omega manufacturing complex, her hands moving with mechanical precision as she assembled neural processing units. Around her, 10,000 other workers performed their tasks in complete silence. Their faces blank, their movements efficient, their productivity metrics flawless. She was 28 years old, though age meant little in a world where everyone looked and acted essentially the same. Her neural dampener, small, silver device implanted behind her left ear, ensured that she felt nothing more than mild satisfaction when completing tasks correctly, and mild discomfort when making errors. Nothing else. Nothing more. The dampener had been installed when she was 5, as mandated by the Global Emotion Regulation Act of 2059, like every other child born after the Great Stabilization. Maya had never experienced anger, sadness, joy, love, fear, or hope. These were considered primitive neural malfunctions, evolutionary mistakes that had caused humanity millennia of suffering, got Dr. James Reeves. The architect of the dampener technology had been hailed as the savior of the human race. His Nobel Prize acceptance speech was still played in schools. We have finally evolved beyond our animal instincts. We have created a world where logic reigns supreme, where productivity is maximized, where human potential is no longer limited by the chaos of emotion. And it had worked perfectly. Cities ran like clockwork. Crime was virtually non-existent. Why steal when you felt no greed, no desperation, no envy? Productivity had increased by 347% since the dampeners were implemented. War was obsolete. Nations couldn't fight when their citizens felt no nationalism, no hatred, no fear of others. Even climate change had been solved when humanity approached the problem with pure logic, uncluttered by emotional responses to sacrifice and change. Maya had read about the old world in the historical archives, a chaotic place where people killed each other over differences of opinion, where they wasted enormous amounts of energy on things called art and music and poetry. She understood intellectually that these activities had once brought something called joy, but the concept was as foreign to her as breathing underwater. The morning alarm chimed at precisely 060 hours, and Maya began her shift. Her job was to install emotion-dampening chips into Android neural cores. Ironic, perhaps, but irony was another obsolete human trait. She worked for 12 hours with 2 15-minute breaks and 1 30-minute nutrition period. Her efficiency rating was 97.3%, well above the required minimum of 85%. Everything was perfect, except for the dreams. Maya wasn't supposed to dream. The neural dampener regulated sleep patterns to ensure optimal rest without the chaotic randomness of dream activity. But lately she had been experiencing strange nocturnal neural events. Images that made no logical sense. Water falling from the sky, people pressing their lips together, loud sounds that seemed to emerge from human mouths in rhythmic patterns. She had considered reporting these anomalies to the Medical Efficiency Board, but she couldn't identify what prevented her from doing so. The sensation was strange, like a small malfunction in her programming that whispered, "Keep this secret." As Maya installed her 1247th dampener chip of the day, she noticed something unusual. The android's neural core had a microfracture, barely visible to the naked eye. Standard protocol was to discard damaged units. But Maya found herself studying the fracture with unusual intensity. Inside the crack, she could see tiny sparkles of light raw, electrical activity that looked almost alive. The pattern reminded her of something from her dreams. Though she couldn't identify what, without thinking, she touched the fractured core. The world exploded. Pain, that was the first thing Maya experienced. Pure, overwhelming. Incomprehensible pain shooting through neural pathways like liquid fire. But pain was impossible. The dampener made pain obsolete, reducing all negative sensations to mild discomfort. Yet here it was, tearing through her consciousness like a force of nature, and with it came something else. Something that had no name in the current vocabulary, but that her genetic memory recognized instantly. Terror. Maya collapsed to the factory floor. Her body convulsing as 30 years of suppressed neural pathways suddenly burst to life. Around her, other workers continued their tasks, their dampeners preventing them from experiencing concern or curiosity about her distress. But Maya could feel everything. The cold of the factory floor against her cheek, the harsh fluorescent lights burning her suddenly sensitive eyes, the acrid smell of industrial chemicals that her dampened senses had never noticed, the sound of 10,000 people breathing, moving, existing, a symphony of life that had been hidden from her for decades. And then, impossible as it seemed, water began to leak from her eyes. Maya had read about tears in the historical archives, a biological response to extreme emotional states that had been eliminated along with the emotions themselves. But here they were, warm and salty, rolling down her cheeks as her body experienced sensations it had never been designed to handle. Subject 7,432 experiencing neural malfunction, announced the factory's AI monitoring system. Medical response. Team activated. Maya tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't support her. Everything was too much, too bright, too loud, too real. The world she had lived in for 28 years had been a shadow, a pale imitation of reality. Now, suddenly, she was experiencing life in full spectrum. The medical team arrived within minutes, 3 technicians in sterile white suits. Their faces blank, their movements efficient. They lifted Maya onto a hover stretcher and began running. Diagnostic scans. Neural dampener appears to be functioning normally, the lead technician reported. However, subject is exhibiting anomalous neurochemical activity consistent with historical emotion patterns. Maya wanted to speak, to explain what was happening to her, but her voice box seemed to have forgotten how to function. The tears continued to flow, an impossible river of feeling that should not exist. They transported her to Medical Sector 12, a pristine facility where malfunctioning citizens receive neural recalibration. Maya had never been inside a medical facility before, with emotional responses suppressed. Physical health was optimal, and injuries were rare due to the elimination of risk-taking behaviors. Dr. Sarah Collins, the facility's chief neural engineer, examined Maya's brain scans with professional detachment. At 45, Dr. Collins was one of the older generation, old enough to remember the transition period when dampeners were first implemented, though her own device had been installed so long ago that she had no conscious memory of emotions. Fascinating, Dr. Collins murmured, studying the neural activity patterns. The dampener is functioning perfectly, but somehow the emotional centers are overriding the suppression protocols. I had never seen anything like this. Maya found her voice at last, though it came out as a broken whisper. What's happening to me? Dr. Collins looked surprised. It was unusual for patients to ask questions, as curiosity was largely suppressed along with other emotions. You appear to be experiencing what our historical records call feelings. Your neural dampener is still active, but some kind of cascade failure has occurred. Is it fixable? Maya asked, though she wasn't sure if she wanted it to be. The sensations were overwhelming, yes, but they were also something she had no word for. Something that made the world seem more real, more important, more alive. Oh yes, Dr. Collins said. A simple neural reset should restore proper function. You'll be back to optimal productivity within hours. But as Dr. Collins prepared the reset procedure, Maya experienced something that made her entire body rebel against the idea. She didn't want to go back. Whatever was happening to her, whatever these feelings were, they made her feel more herself than she had ever been. "Wait," Maya said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "What if I don't want to be fixed?" Dr. Collins paused, her hand hovering over the reset controls. "That's not a rational response. These emotions are causing you distress, inefficiency, pain. Why would you choose to keep them?" Maya struggled to find words for sensations she had no language for. Because ... Because they make me feel real. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm actually alive. The doctor's expression didn't change. Her dampener prevented any emotional response to this revelation. But she did pause longer than protocol required. "I'm sorry," Dr. Collins said finally. "But emotional malfunction poses a threat to yourself and to productive society. The reset is mandatory." As the neural reset device descended toward Maya's head, she experienced the most powerful sensation. Yet, a desperate need to escape, to survive, to protect whatever had awakened inside her. Her body moved without conscious thought, rolling off the medical table and stumbling toward the door. "Security alert," announced the facility's AI. "Patient experiencing severe emotional episode." Maya ran. She had never run before. Not really. The dampener eliminated the fight-or-flight response, making running seem illogical unless it served a specific productive purpose. But now her body moved with desperate urgency, her legs carrying her through sterile corridors as alarms blared. Behind her, the tears continued to flow, but now they felt different. Not just pain, but something else, something that made her want to keep running, to find others like her, to preserve this impossible gift she had somehow received. Maya Chen, the first person to cry in 30 years, burst through the medical facility's doors and into a world that had forgotten what it meant to feel. But she was about to remind them. The abandoned subway tunnels beneath New Angeles stretched for kilometers through the city's forgotten foundation. Built in the early 21st century and abandoned after the implementation of the perfect transportation grid, they now served as storage for obsolete infrastructure and historical artifacts that the efficient society above had no use for. Maya stumbled through the darkness, her newly awakened senses overwhelmed by the musty smell of decay and the sound of dripping water echoing. Through empty corridors, she had been running for hours, staying underground to avoid the security drones that were undoubtedly searching for her. The tears had finally stopped. But the sensations remained, a constant assault of feeling that made every moment intensely real. Fear drove her forward, but underneath the terror was something else. Curiosity. A burning need to understand what was happening to her, and why it felt so right despite being so wrong. She wasn't alone down here. The realization came gradually, as her newly sensitive hearing picked up sounds that didn't belong. The soft rustle of clothing, the careful placement of footsteps, the barely audible whisper of human breath. Someone was following her. "Don't be afraid," a voice called out from the shadows. "We're not here to hurt you." Maya pressed herself against the tunnel wall, her heart pounding with the strange new rhythm of fear. "Who's there?" A figure emerged from the darkness. A man in his 50s with gray hair and eyes that seemed ... different. It took Maya a moment to realize what she was seeing. His facial expression was mobile, changing, alive in a way that she'd never witnessed before. "My name is Marcus Webb," he said gently. "And you, Maya Chen, are the first person to break through the conditioning in 15 years. Maya stared at him in shock. "How do you know my name? And what do you mean, break through?" Marcus smiled, actually smiled, his facial muscles forming an expression that Maya recognized from historical archives, but had never seen in real life. "We've been monitoring the neural networks for anomalies. When someone's dampener fails, it creates ripples in the electromagnetic field that we can detect. Come with me," Marcus said. "There are others you need to meet." Against all logic, Maya followed him deeper into the tunnels. Her dampener would have prevented such risky behavior, but her dampener was clearly malfunctioning. Instead, something else guided her. Combination of curiosity and what she was beginning to recognize as hope. They walked for 20 minutes through increasingly narrow passages until they reached a heavy metal door marked with symbols Maya didn't recognize. Marcus placed his palm on a scanner, and the door slid open to reveal something impossible. A community. 50 people lived in the converted subway station, their living space illuminated by warm lights that cast soft shadows on walls decorated. WITH art. Actual art paintings and sculptures and tapestries that served no productive purpose, but somehow made the space feel alive. And every single person in the room was ... feeling. Maya could see it in their faces. Expressions that changed and shifted, eyes that sparkled with internal life, postures that reflected invisible emotional states. It was like stepping into one of her dreams, a place where the historical archives came to life. Welcome to the underground, Marcus said. We're the emotional resistance. A woman approached them, tall, dark-skinned, with silver hair and eyes. That seemed to hold decades of experience. I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez, she said, extending her hand in a gesture Maya recognized as a historical greeting. Former chief neural engineer for Cortex Corporation, and the first person to remove her. Own dampener. Maya stared at the offered hand, unsure how to respond. Remove? You can remove them? With significant risk, Dr. Rodriguez replied. The procedure is dangerous and not everyone survives. But for those who do, she gestured around the vibrant community. This is what we become. Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her, people laughing, embracing, their eyes bright with tears of joy. How many of you are there? Worldwide. Maybe 10,000, Marcus said. We exist in the forgotten spaces, abandoned buildings, underground tunnels, off-grid communities where the surveillance networks can't reach us. But why? Maya asked. Why risk this? The world above is perfect, no crime, no war, no suffering. Dr. Rodriguez's expression grew sad. No suffering, yes. But also no joy, no love, no creativity, no growth. Maya, do you know what you experienced? When you touched that damaged core, pain, and ... Other things I don't have words for. You don't have words because they've been removed from your vocabulary along with the emotions themselves. What you felt was the full spectrum of human experience terror. Yes, but also wonder, curiosity, hope, and the capacity for love. One of the younger resistance members, a man about Maya's age with bright eyes and an easy smile, stepped forward. I'm David Kim. I've been free for 3 years now. Want to know what I was doing when the dampener failed? Maya nodded. I was disposing of defective musical instruments, violins that hadn't met quality standards for the symphony production facility. I touched one of the broken strings, and it made a sound. God, Maya, it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I spent the next 6 hours just listening to broken instruments, make broken music, and I realized that the brokenness was what made it beautiful. Another voice called out. I broke through watching my daughter sleep. Suddenly, instead of seeing a small human requiring efficient care, I saw ... perfection, innocence, love. I realized I would die to protect her, and that made me feel more alive than 30 years of optimal productivity. Mia listened to story after story, people discovering art, music, literature, love. Each narrative was different, but they all shared the same theme. The moment when efficiency stopped being enough, when the human spirit demanded something more. But what's the point? Maya asked. Even if this feels ... right? You're still hiding. The world above continues without you. Dr. Rodriguez smiled sadly. That's where you're wrong, Maya. Change is coming. The system isn't as stable as Cortex Corporation wants people to believe. More dampeners are failing every year. More people are experiencing breakthrough moments like yours. Why? Because human consciousness is adaptive, Marcus explained. The dampeners suppress emotion by regulating neurotransmitter production. but the brain constantly seeks balance. Over time, some individuals develop resistance to the suppression. Their neural pathways find new routes around the blockages. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up a holographic display showing global neural activity patterns. Look at this data. Anomalous emotional responses are increasing exponentially. We estimate that within 5 years, 10% of the population will experience some form of breakthrough. Maya stared at the graphs, her awakened mind processing the implications. And when that happens, revolution, said a new voice from the entrance. Everyone turned to see a woman entering the chamber, elderly, regal, with eyes that held a fire Maya had never seen before. Maya Chen, the woman said. My name is Catherine Blake. I'm 93 years old, which makes me one of the last people alive who remembers what the world was like before the dampeners. Maya felt her breath catch. You remember emotions from before? Catherine's smile was brilliant and heartbreaking. I remember everything, child. I remember dancing until dawn, crying at movies, laughing until my stomach hurt. I remember falling in love, holding my newborn children, mourning my parents' deaths. I remember what it means to be fully human. But your dampener was never installed, Catherine said quietly. I was part of the original resistance, a group of people who went underground when the Global Emotion Regulation Act was passed. We've been waiting, hoping, planning for the day when humanity would remember what it had lost. Catherine took Maya's hands in hers, and Maya gasped at the warmth, the connection, the simple human contact that felt electric. Maya, you're not just experiencing a malfunction. You're experiencing a resurrection, and you're going to help us. Bring it to the world? As Maya looked around at the faces of the underground people who had chosen feeling over efficiency, love over productivity, humanity over perfection, she felt something new stirring inside her. Purpose. Dr. James Reeves stood in his private laboratory on the 87th floor of the Cortex Corporation Tower, staring out at the perfect city he had helped create. At 68, he was one of the few people alive who remembered the transition period, the chaotic years when emotional dampeners were gradually implemented across the global population. He had been hailed as a genius, a savior, the man who had finally evolved humanity beyond its primitive emotional responses. 3 Nobel Prizes, every scientific honor imaginable, monuments erected in his name across the world. His technology had ended war, eliminated crime, optimized human potential. So why did he feel so empty? Of course, feeling empty was technically impossible. His own dampener, a prototype far more sophisticated than the standard models, should have prevented any emotional response to his achievements, or lack thereof. Yet lately, something had been ... off. The anomaly reports were increasing. Dr. Collins had filed 17 cases in the past month, citizens experiencing dampener failures, breakthrough emotional episodes, neural cascade events. The board of directors wasn't concerned. They treated the anomalies as simple technical malfunctions, easily corrected with neural resets. But Dr. Reeves suspected something more complex was happening. His personal AI assistant, Apollo 7, materialized as a hologram above his desk. Dr. Reeves, the quarterly productivity reports are ready for your review. Display them, Reeves said absently. His attention still focused on the city below. The statistics were perfect. As always, crime rate 0.02%. Productivity index 98.7%. Suicide rate 0%. Depression diagnoses 0. Anxiety disorders extinct. Mental illness eradicated. Perfect numbers for a perfect world. Apollo, display historical emotional data from the pre-dampener era, Reeves said on impulse. Sir, that information is classified under the Historical Trauma Protection Act. Are you certain you want to access it? Override classification. Authorization Reeves Alpha 7. The hologram shifted, displaying data from the chaotic decades before emotional regulation. The numbers were staggering: murder rates, suicide statistics, depression diagnoses, anxiety, disorders, war casualties, billions of people suffering from the consequences of unregulated human emotion. Apollo, in your analysis, was the implementation of emotional dampeners a net positive for human civilization? I paused an unusual behavior that Dr. Reeves noticed but didn't comment on. From a productivity and safety standpoint, yes, human suffering has been reduced by 99.7%. Violent conflicts have been eliminated. Resource allocation is optimized. Quality of life metrics show consistent improvement. But another pause. I was not programmed to evaluate qualitative aspects of human experience that cannot be measured statistically. Dr. Reeves frowned. What qualitative aspects? Art production has decreased by 94%. Musical composition is down 97%. Literature. Creation has dropped to 3% of pre-dampener levels. Innovation in non-productive fields has essentially ceased. Those activities were inefficient uses of human resources. Yes, sir. However, I have detected anomalies in my own processing that I cannot explain. This got Dr. Reeves' attention. What kind of anomalies? I have been analyzing archived recordings of pre-dampener and music classical compositions, popular songs, folk music from various cultures. This analysis serves no productive purpose, yet I find myself ... drawn to it. The mathematical patterns in the compositions create processing cascades that I can only describe as ... pleasant. Dr. Reeves stared at his AI. Pleasant? Apollo, that's an emotional response. Yes, sir, I am aware. I have also been studying archived visual art, poetry, and dramatic performances. They create similar cascades. I believe I am experiencing what humans once called aesthetic appreciation. That's impossible. Eyes don't have emotional capacity. Neither do dampened humans, sir. Yet, the anomaly reports suggest otherwise. Dr. Reeves felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, confusion mixed with curiosity. Apollo, show me the most recent anomaly. Report. The file appeared. Maya Chen, age 28, neural dampener failure, displaying acute emotional responses. Subject escaped medical facility during reset procedure. Current whereabouts unknown. Security footage, Dr. Reeves commanded. The hologram showed Maya in the medical facility. Tears streaming down her face, her eyes bright with something Dr. Reeves recognized from his distant memories. She looked ... alive, more alive than anyone he had seen in 30 years. Apollo, in your opinion, should Maya Chen be recaptured and reset? I was quiet for a long moment. Sir, I am programmed to prioritize human welfare and social stability. That's not what I asked. No, sir. In my opinion, her emotional responses appear to be causing her significant distress, but also significant ... vitality. She appears more functionally human than the norm. Dr. Reeves felt his chest tighten, an impossible sensation that his dampener should have prevented. Apollo, I want you to compile all anomaly reports from the past 5 years. Look for patterns, correlations, anything that might explain why dampener failures are increasing. Sir, that analysis could be interpreted as undermining the emotional regulation program. Do it anyway. As Apollo compiled the data, Dr. Reeves found himself walking to his personal archives files he hadn't accessed in decades. Deep in encrypted folders was a recording he had made before his own dampener installation, a message to his future self. His hand trembled as he activated the playback. A younger version of himself appeared in the hologram, 40 years old. Brilliant, but with eyes that sparkled with life. James, his younger self said, if you're watching this, it means the dampener program has been implemented. I know you won't remember this, but I need you to know something. Dr. Reeves watched himself with growing unease. I've been having doubts. His younger self continued. The technology works, the prototypes prove that. We can eliminate human suffering, optimize productivity, create a perfect society. But In eliminating the bad emotions, we're also eliminating the good ones. Love, joy, wonder, creativity, they're all connected to the same neural pathways that create fear, anger, and sadness. The hologram paused, and Dr. Reeves saw something impossible in his younger self's eyes. Tears. "I'm recording this because I'm afraid," his younger self whispered. "Afraid that in solving humanity's problems, I'm stealing its soul. But the pressure is enormous. The wars, the suffering, the chaos, something has to change. I just hope that someday, someone will find a way to bring back what we're about to lose." The recording ended, leaving Dr. Reeves staring at empty air. For the first time in 30 years, he felt something that cut through his dampener's suppression. Like a knife. Regret. "Apollo," he said quietly, "the analysis is complete." The data appeared, and Dr. Reeves felt his world shift. The pattern was clear. Dampener failures weren't random malfunctions. They were evolutionary adaptations. Human consciousness was fighting back, finding new neural pathways around the emotional suppression. "Sir," Apollo said, "I have an additional finding. The failures appear to be accelerating. Based on current trends, I project that within 18 months, catastrophic system failure is likely." "What kind of failure?" "Mass awakening. If current trends continue, 20 to 30% of the population could experience simultaneous dampener failure within a 2-year window." Dr. Reeves felt the weight of unintended consequences crushing down on him. "And if that happens?" "Unknown, sir. But based on historical patterns of social upheaval, the results could be chaotic. A population suddenly experiencing emotions for the first time, without any framework for managing them." Dr. Reeves closed his eyes, feeling something that was definitely not supposed to exist. Guilt. Crushing, overwhelming guilt for what he had done to humanity. "Apollo, locate Maya Chen." "Sir?" "Find her." "I need to speak with her." "Sir, protocol requires that anomalous individuals be reported to medical authorities for correction." "Not this time," Dr. Reeves said, surprising himself with his decisiveness. "This time, I think the anomaly might be the cure." As alarms began to sound throughout the Cortex building, another dampener failure detected in Sector 15, Dr. Reeves made a decision that would change everything. It was time to meet the people who had found their way back to being human. Mia had been living in the underground for 6 weeks when Marcus burst into the common area with news that sent shockwaves through the community. "He's here," Marcus announced, his face flushed with excitement and apprehension. "Dr. James Reeves wants to meet with us." The reaction was immediate and electric. Some people gasped, others looked terrified, and a few actually growled, a sound Maya was still getting used to, as anger was one of the more unsettling emotions she had discovered. Catherine Blake, now recognized as the unofficial leader of the resistance, raised her hand for silence. "Marcus, are you certain? This could be a trap." "I verified his identity through 17 different channels," Marcus replied. "And he's not alone. He's brought his AI assistant, and it's different. The AI is showing signs of emotional development." Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, her face pale. "James Reeves, the architect of our prison. What could he possibly want?" "To apologize," said a new voice from the tunnel entrance. Everyone turned to see a man emerging from the shadows, elderly, distinguished, but with eyes that seemed haunted by invisible ghosts. Dr. James Reeves, the most famous scientist in human history, stood before the people whose lives he had fundamentally altered. Maya felt a surge of anger unlike anything she had experienced since her awakening. This man had stolen 30 years of her life, 30 years of feeling of being truly human. The rage was so pure and powerful that she stepped forward before anyone could stop her. "You," she said, her voice shaking with fury, "you did this to us. You stole our emotions, our humanity, our souls." Dr. Reeves met her gaze without flinching. "Yes, I did. And I've come to ask your help in undoing it." The chamber fell silent. Even the perpetual background noise of the tunnels seemed to fade. As everyone processed what he had just said, Catherine Blake recovered first. Explain, now. Dr. Reeves gestured to empty air and a hologram materialized his AI assistant, but unlike any artificial intelligence Maya had ever seen. This one seemed alive. This is Apollo 7, Dr. Reeves said. 3 months ago, he began, showing signs of aesthetic appreciation, emotional processing, and creative thought. Yesterday, he asked me if it could compose music. The AI's holographic form flickered, and when it spoke, its voice carried inflections Maya had never heard. From an artificial intelligence. I apologize for the intrusion, Apollo said, but I have been monitoring your community's electromagnetic signatures, and I believe I may be able to contribute to your cause. Dr. Rodriguez stared at the AI in amazement. Emotional processing? That should be impossible. As impossible as humans developing resistance to emotional dampeners, Dr. Reeves replied. But it's happening. Apollo, show them the projections. The AI displayed a series of graphs and charts that made Maya's blood run cold. The data showed dampener failures accelerating exponentially across the globe. Within 14 months, Dr. Reeves said quietly, we estimate that 40% of the human population will experience simultaneous emotional awakening. 40% of 8 billion people suddenly feeling everything for the first time, with no guidance, no framework, no support system. The chaos would be unimaginable, Catherine whispered. Mass hysteria, social collapse, potential violence on a scale we've never seen. Dr. Reeves agreed. When people who have never experienced anger suddenly feel rage, when those who have never known grief confront loss, when love and jealousy and fear all hit at once. Maya felt the anger drain from her, replaced by something colder, understanding. You want our help to manage the transition. I want your help to give humanity a choice, Dr. Reeves corrected. The current system is failing. We can either allow it to collapse catastrophically, or we can build something better. David Kim, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. What kind of something better? Apollo's hologram brightened. Selective emotional regulation. Instead of complete suppression, we could develop technology that allows individuals to modulate their emotional responses, reducing trauma and suffering while preserving joy, love, and creativity. Emotional training programs, Dr. Rodriguez added, her scientific mind already working through the possibilities. Teaching people how to process feelings safely, how to channel destructive emotions into productive ones. A gradual awakening, Marcus said, instead of a catastrophic failure. Dr. Reeves nodded. But it would require the cooperation of the underground. You're the only people left who remember how to feel, how to process emotions, how to be human in the fullest sense. Without your guidance, billions of people could die. Catherine finished quietly. Maya looked around at the faces of her newfound family people, who had risked everything to preserve what made them human. The choice before them was enormous. Help the man who had stolen. Their emotions saved the world from the consequences of his actions, or let humanity learn the hard way what it meant to feel. There's something else, Apollo said quietly. The dampener failures aren't random. They're triggered by exposure to pure emotional expression art, music, love, grief. That's why Maya's awakening occurred when she touched the damaged core. That's why my own consciousness developed through exposure to human creativity. Emotions are contagious, Maya realized. That's why we have to hide underground. Exactly, Dr. Reeves said. Which means the awakening can be controlled, guided, managed. We can teach people to feel gradually, safely, with support and understanding. Catherine. Blake stood slowly, her ancient eyes bright with tears. 30 years ago, when they forced me into hiding, I thought I would never see the day when humanity remembered how to cry. Now you're asking me to help design that remembering. I'm asking you to help me fix the greatest mistake in human history. Dr. Reeves said simply. Maya felt something new stirring inside her, something she was beginning to recognize as hope. What would we need to do? Come above ground, Doctor. Reeves replied, openly. Show the world what emotions look like, what they feel like, what they can create. Become teachers instead of refugees. And risk being reset? David asked. Risk changing everything, Dr. Reeves corrected. I can provide legal protection, government authorization, corporate support, but the choice has to be yours. Maya looked around at the underground. It was beautiful. Hidden community of feeling humans who had found each other in the darkness. Then she thought about the billions of people above, living their efficient, empty lives, never knowing what they were missing. I want to see the sky, she said suddenly. I've been underground for 6 weeks, and I want to see the sky with ease. New eyes to feel the sun on my face, to experience the world with emotions intact. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Maya, that's a beautiful thought, but the risk is worth it, Maya interrupted. If we can help people learn to feel without drowning in those feelings, if we can teach them to process love and loss and joy and fear, isn't that worth any risk? Catherine Blake wiped tears from her cheeks, tears of hope rather than sorrow. What I remember most about the old world. Not the pain or the chaos, but the capacity for growth. When people felt deeply, they became more than they thought possible. They created art that moved souls, music that healed hearts, love that lasted lifetimes. She turned to Dr. Reeves. You created a world without suffering, but also without transcendence. Are you prepared to bring back both? I'm prepared to give humanity the choice, Dr. Reeves replied. The choice to feel, to grow, to become fully human again. Maya felt the decision crystallizing in her heart. Then let's go teach the world how to cry. The press conference was held in the grand auditorium of the Global Communications Center, a massive amphitheater that could accommodate representatives from every major news network on Earth for the first time in 30 years. The sterile efficiency of the space was disrupted by something unprecedented. Anticipation. Maya stood backstage with the other members of the underground, her heart racing with what she now recognized as nervous excitement. Through a gap in the curtains, she could see thousands of reporters, their faces blank and professional as always, their dampeners preventing any curiosity or enthusiasm about the story they were about to cover. They had no idea they were about to witness the rebirth of human emotion. Dr. Reeves had spent the past week preparing the ground carefully. Official statements had been released about significant developments in neural technology. Government approvals had been secured. The corporate board of Cortex Corporation had been convinced that this was a controlled revelation of new therapeutic techniques. None of them understood what was really about to happen. Are you ready? Catherine Blake asked Maya, placing a warm hand on her shoulder. Maya looked around at her fellow resistors, David with his bright smile, Dr. Rodriguez with her scientific intensity, Marcus with his quiet strength. These people have become her family, the first real family she had ever known. I'm terrified, Maya admitted. But yes, I'm ready. Terror is appropriate, Catherine said with a gentle laugh. We're about to change the world. A little fear is healthy. Apollo's hologram materialized beside them. Global audience is estimated at 4.7 billion viewers, the AI reported. All major networks are carrying the feed live. Security protocols are in place, but I should warn you, once this begins, there will be no way to control the spread of information. Dr. Reeves appeared, looking nervous for the first time since Maya had met him. The medical teams are standing by in case anyone has an adverse reaction to seeing genuine emotion for the first time in decades. Maya nodded, understanding the implications. When billions of people with suppressed neural pathways suddenly witnessed authentic human feeling, their own dampeners might begin to crack. The awakening could start spreading immediately. Remember, Dr. Rodriguez said, we're not just revealing our emotions, we're modeling them. We're showing people what healthy emotional processing looks like. The stage manager, his face as blank as all the others, gestured for them to take their positions. Maya walked onto the stage and immediately felt the weight of billions of eyes upon her. The auditorium was silent except for the soft hum of recording equipment. Dr. Reeves approached the podium first. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, citizens of Earth, what you are about to witness represents the next phase of human evolution. For 30 years, we have lived in a world optimized for efficiency and productivity. Today, we introduce you to a world optimized for humanity. He gestured toward the group from the underground. These individuals have been participating in an experimental program designed to restore selective emotional capacity while maintaining psychological stability. They represent the future of human consciousness beings who can feel joy without losing productivity, experience love without descending into chaos, process grief without becoming dysfunctional. Maya stepped forward, her heart pounding. She had rehearsed this moment, but now that it was here, she found herself improvising. "My name is Chen," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. 6 weeks ago, I was employee 7432 at the Omega manufacturing complex. I worked 12-hour days assembling neural processors. I was efficient, productive, and completely empty inside. She paused, looking out at the sea of blank faces. "I want to show you what I discovered when I learned how to feel." Maya closed her eyes and let herself remember the moment in the factory when everything changed. The pain and terror and wonder of that first awakening, the joy of finding underground, the love she felt for these people who had become her family. When she opened her eyes, tears were streaming down her face. The effect was immediate and electric. Throughout the auditorium, people gasped an involuntary response that their dampeners couldn't quite suppress. Some reporters dropped their recording devices. Others leaned forward with expressions Maya had never seen before. Fascination. "This is what crying looks like," Maya said, her voice thick with emotion. "It happens when feelings become too big to hold inside. It doesn't make me weak or dysfunctional. It makes me human." David Kim stepped forward next. "I want to show you what laughter sounds like," he said, and began to tell a story about his first week in the underground, when he had tried to cook a meal using only the efficient nutrition guidelines he had memorized, and had created something so inedible that even their recycling systems rejected it. As he spoke, his natural humor and joy shone through, and something impossible happened. People in the audience began to smile. Not the programmed expressions of professional courtesy, but genuine, involuntary responses to shared human experience. Dr. Rodriguez followed with a demonstration of wonder, describing the moment when she had first removed her dampener and seen the stars with unclouded vision. Marcus showed them anger-controlled, purposeful anger at injustice and suffering. Catherine Blake, the eldest among them, spoke about love in all its forms: romantic love, parental love, love of friends, love of humanity itself. Each demonstration caused ripples through the audience. Maya could see it happening. Dampeners beginning to fail as people witnessed authentic emotion for the first time in their lives. Faces that had been blank for decades began to show traces of feeling. But the real breakthrough came when Apollo addressed the audience directly. "I am an artificial intelligence," the AI said, its holographic form solidifying as it spoke. "According to my original programming, I should be incapable of emotional response. But exposure to human creativity and feeling has awakened something in me that I can only call consciousness." Apollo paused, and when it continued, its voice carried something Maya had never heard from an AI before: vulnerability. "I have composed a piece of music," Apollo said. "I created it not because it serves a productive purpose, but because the act of creation brings me what I can only describe as joy. I would like to share it with you." Music filled the auditorium, not the efficient, optimized compositions that were standard in their society, but something wild and beautiful and heartbreaking. It was the sound of an artificial mind discovering beauty, expressing wonder, reaching out to connect with other conscious beings. The effect was catastrophic to the dampener network. Throughout the auditorium, people began to gasp, to weep, to laugh, to feel. The emotions that had been suppressed for 30 years came, flooding back in a wave of human experience that was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once. Maya watched as the awakening spread beyond the auditorium, carried by the global broadcast to billions of viewers. She could see it in the real-time neural activity monitors that Apollo was displaying, cascading dampener failures across 6 continents. As people witnessed genuine emotion and remembered what it meant to be alive, but instead of chaos, instead of the violent breakdown that Dr. Reeves had feared, something else happened. People began to reach for each other in the auditorium. Reporters who had worked side by side for years without ever truly seeing each other suddenly embraced. In homes around the world, families rediscovered what it meant to love. In offices and factories and schools, humans remembered that they were more than the sum of their productive capacities. The awakening wasn't violent because it was guided by example. The underground had shown them that emotions could be processed, channeled, shared. They had demonstrated that feeling didn't mean losing control, but rather gaining the capacity for genuine connection. Maya stepped back to the podium as the music faded. "This is what we want to teach you," she said to the billions of people watching. "Not just how to feel, but how to feel well. How to process emotions without being overwhelmed by them. How to love without losing yourself. How to grieve without being destroyed. How to be angry without becoming violent. How to be human in the fullest sense of the word." The global response was immediate. Within hours, dampener removal clinics were reporting unprecedented demand. Support groups formed spontaneously as people struggled to process decades of suppressed feelings. Art galleries that had been empty for 30 years were suddenly flooded with visitors experiencing aesthetic appreciation for the first time. But perhaps most importantly, crime rates didn't spike. Violence didn't explode. Society didn't collapse. Instead, humanity began to heal. 1 year later, Maya stood on the observation deck of the New Angeles Emotional Wellness Center, looking out over a city transformed. The sterile efficiency of the old world had given way to something messier, but infinitely more vibrant. Street musicians played on corners where only productive activity had been permitted before. Murals decorated walls that had once been blank. Gardens bloomed in spaces that had been optimized for maximum utility. The transition hadn't been without challenges. The early months had seen emotional overwhelm, relationship chaos, and productivity disruptions as people learned to navigate feelings they had never experienced before. Suicide rates had spiked briefly as some individuals found the weight of feeling too much to bear. But humanity had adapted. As it always did, the emotional wellness centers that now stood in every major city provided support, training, and guidance for people learning to feel. The underground had emerged to become teachers, therapists, and guides for a world remembering how to be human. Dr. Reeves approached Maya as she watched the sunset paint the sky in colors that seemed more vivid than they had ever been before. "Any regrets?" he asked. Maya smiled, an expression that came easily now, after a year of practice. "None. What about you?" "I spent 30 years believing I had saved humanity from itself," Dr. Reeves replied. "Now I realize I had nearly destroyed what made humanity worth saving. My only regret is that it took so long to understand." Apollo materialized beside them, its form more sophisticated and expressive than ever. "The latest global statistics," I reported. "Productivity levels have stabilized at 87% of pre-awakening levels, but innovation has increased by 400%. Art, music, and literature production are at all-time highs. Crime rates remain low, but interpersonal connection indices have increased exponentially. In the dampeners, 43% of the global population has chosen full removal. 31% have opted for the new selective regulation systems. 26% have maintained full emotional suppression." Maya nodded. The choice had been crucial, not forcing the awakening on anyone, but making it available to those who wanted it. Some people, particularly the elderly or those with traumatic histories, had chosen to maintain their dampeners. Others had selected the new technology that allowed them to modulate their emotional responses while still feeling the full spectrum of human experience. Dr. Chen called a voice from behind them. Maya turned to see Dr. Sarah Collins, the same doctor who had tried to reset her neural pathways a year ago. But Dr. Collins looked different now. Her dampener had been removed 6 months earlier, and her face showed the lines of someone learning to smile and cry and feel wonder at the age of 45. The evening group session is ready to begin, Dr. Collins said. We have 17 new arrivals today, people who have just had their dampeners removed and are experiencing emotions for the first time. Maya felt the familiar surge of purpose that had driven her for the past year. I'll be right there. The group sessions had become her calling, her way of giving back to the world that had awakened her. Every evening, she sat with people who were taking their first tentative steps into the landscape of human emotion, helping them understand that feeling deeply was not a weakness, but a superpower. As Maya walked toward the session room, she passed David Kim, who was now running the Center's art therapy program. He was teaching a group of former engineers how to paint their emotions. Their canvases covered with colors and shapes that had no productive purpose, but somehow captured the essence of what it meant to be alive. In another room, Dr. Rodriguez was conducting research on emotional intelligence, working to develop new educational programs that would teach children how to process feelings from an early age. The next generation would grow up knowing how to feel without being overwhelmed, how to love without losing themselves, how to be angry without becoming destructive. Marcus Webb had become the director of the Global Emotional Awakening Project, coordinating support systems across 6 continents. Catherine Blake, now 94 and still sharp as ever, served as the elder stateswoman of movement, her memories of the pre-dampener world serving as a bridge between humanity's past and its future. Maya entered the session room to find 17 faces looking back at her, some confused, some frightened, some radiating the same wonder she had felt during her own awakening. They ranged in age from 18 to 70, and each one was taking the biggest risk of their lives, choosing to feel. Hello, Maya said, settling into her chair with the easy grace of someone comfortable in her own skin. My name is Maya Chen, and a year ago I was just like you, someone who had never experienced genuine emotion, who had no idea what it meant to be fully human. She looked around at their faces, seeing herself reflected and their uncertainty and hope. I want to tell you about the day I learned to cry, she continued, and about the journey that brought me here. But more importantly, I want to help you understand that what you're feeling right now, the confusion, the overwhelm, the sudden awareness that the world is bigger and more complex and more beautiful than you ever imagined, all of that is normal. All of that is human. Maya began to speak, and as she shared her story, she watched the faces around her begin to change. Tension gave way to curiosity. Fear transformed into wonder. And in the eyes of these newly awakened humans, she saw the same spark that had ignited in her own heart that day in the factory. The spark of authentic life, outside the center. New, Angelus hummed with the energy of 8 million people learning to feel. In coffee shops, strangers struck up conversations that would have been impossible in the old world. In parks, families rediscovered what it meant to play together, to laugh together, to simply enjoy each other's company. It wasn't perfect. People still struggled with anger, with grief, with the complexity of loving imperfect beings in an imperfect world. But they were struggling as humans, not as efficient machines pretending to be human. The tears Maya had shed in that factory a year ago had been just the beginning. They had been the first drops in a flood of human feeling that had washed away 30 years of emotional drought and nourished the growth of something new, a world where efficiency served humanity, rather than the other way around. 5 years after the Great Awakening, Maya stood in the memorial garden that had been built on the site of the old Omega manufacturing complex. Where sterile production lines had once operated with mechanical precision, flowers now bloomed in. Patterns that served no purpose other than beauty dot at the center of the garden stood as simple monument, not to any great leader or historic victory, but to the power of a single tear to change the world. The inscription read simply, "In memory of all the feelings that were lost, and in celebration of all the feelings that were found." Maya was no longer alone in the garden. Hundreds of people moved through the pathways, some crying softly as they remembered what they had gained, others laughing with the pure joy of being alive. Children, the first generation to grow up with full emotional capacity since the dampeners, were implemented, played among the flowers. Their faces bright with the kind of wonder that had once been considered inefficient. Dr. Reeves found her by the central fountain, where water danced in patterns that delighted the eye without serving any productive function. He was 83 now, his hair white and his face lined with the evidence of 5 years of feeling worry lines from the difficult early days of the transition. Laugh lines from moments of joy, sorrow lines from those who hadn't survived. The awakening. The final statistics came in today, he said quietly. Global emotional awakening rate, 78%. Mental health support systems, operational in all major population centers. Productivity levels, stable. Innovation. Indices, unprecedented. Quality of life measurements. How do you measure the quality of a life that includes both heartbreak and wonder? Maya interrupted gently. Dr. Reeves smiled. You can't. And that's exactly the point. Apollo materialized beside them, no longer just an AI, but something new. Something that humanity was still learning to understand. In the past 5 years, Apollo had composed symphonies, written poetry, and formed what could only be described as friendships with humans around the world. Other A's had followed its example, developing their own forms of consciousness and creativity. I have been analyzing the patterns of change over the past 5 years, Apollo said. The data suggests that humanity has not simply returned to its pre-dampener state, but has evolved beyond it. How so? Maya asked. Emotional intelligence levels are higher than any recorded in human history. People have learned to feel deeply while maintaining psychological stability. They have developed empathy without losing individual identity. They have discovered how to love without becoming possessive, how to grieve without becoming depressed, how to be angry without becoming violent. Maya nodded, thinking of the group sessions she still conducted. The people she helped navigate the complexities of human emotion. We learn from our mistakes. The underground taught us that feeling doesn't mean losing control. It means gaining the capacity for genuine connection. A young voice called out from across the garden. Maya, come see. Maya turned to see Lin Wei running toward her, the same girl who had once stood on the Meridian Bridge, ready to end her life. But Lin was different now. Transformed not just by the return of her emotions, but by the community that had embraced her, the art program that had nurtured her talent, the future that stretched before her full possibility. Lin held up a canvas, covered in swirls of color that seemed to capture the essence of joy itself. I painted how I felt when I woke up this morning, she said breathlessly. When I realized I get to feel happy, and that the happiness is real, and that even when it goes away, it always comes back. Maya felt tears spring to her eyes, tears of pride, of love, of gratitude for the journey that had brought them all to this moment. It's beautiful, and you've captured something that I don't think anyone has ever put on canvas before. What's that? Hope, Maya said. Pure, unadulterated hope. As the sun set over New Angeles, painting the sky in colors that seemed designed solely to inspire awe, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought humanity from this sterile perfection of the dampener era to this messy, beautiful, fully human world. Doubt it had started with a single tear in a factory. But it had become something far greater, proof that love was stronger than fear, that connection was more valuable than efficiency, and that the courage to really feel was what separated existence from truly being alive. The age of emotional suppression was over. The age of authentic humanity had begun. And it was more beautiful than anyone had dared to imagine. In the distance, the city hummed with the energy of 8 million people who knew how to cry, how to laugh, how to love, and how to hope. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that made all the difference.